Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. Happy New Year to you and yours that is watching. And of course, a lovely welcome to Season 3 of this particular program. In case you're just joining us for the very first time, Season 2 of Crossfire concluded and came to an end officially last December. So this particular episode is the first episode of Season 3. So thank you so much for joining us. And also, in case you're just joining us for the very first time, remember that this is a very interactive program. Later on in the program, of course, the phone lines will be open and stuck. The number will be stuck on your TV screen or television set, or rather even your phone screen, whatever you're using to watch us right now. And you'll be able to call in and get through to us and ask any questions as regards the topic of discussion tonight. So tonight on the program, we're speaking to People's Alliance for Change President, Mr. Antford Banda, who will be discussing the state of the nation with us and just basically giving us a review of 2021 and what to expect come 2022, his expectations, that is. So Mr. Banda, good evening and welcome to Crossfire.
Good evening, Gloria, and good evening to the viewers out there. Thank you for inviting me on this program.
Thank you so much for coming through. We haven't heard so much from you just after the elections. Where have you been?
Re-energizing, re-strategizing, and just reflecting on the trajectory that we were to take our politics. I think the last 5 years were a bit hectic. We did a lot of work. Campaigned, and we had change. I think what we needed was some level of change, and I think after the change came, it was an opportunity, to reflect and re-energize for a bit as we gave the new government to settle. But we are here, we are back.
All right. So, yeah. I mean, since we're talking about the election aspect of it, let me just get right into it. How would you describe your performance in the 2021 August polls?
Our performance?
This is the second time you stood, am I right?
Yeah, we came out number 4, but not the performance we expected, especially with the number of votes that we got. I think we wanted to get more votes, and I think our minimum target was number 3. And however, elections are like that, but we're happy with the overall distribution of votes across the country. I think we had the best vote distribution, outside PF and UPND. We got votes from almost all the areas. We didn't just lump our votes in one area, which, I mean, if you look at it on outside the PF and UPND, candidate to candidate, we find that I think we got more number 3s than all the candidates that ever got to number 3. So I think it also shows that we're going at the same pace like in 2016, where we also got a good number of number 3s, and we had a good, voter distribution, which means that our party is accepted almost across the country, just as opposed to one region. Yeah.
All right. So I mean, last year's election was quite eye-opening for most politicians. What do you think presidential aspirants as yourself can learn from that election?
I think what we can learn from that election is that, first of all, it was a very difficult election because you had the PF in power who had, just crossed the line and just frustrated people, and people wanted them out. And then it was difficult for people, even those that supported us, to risk, supporting us, because what they felt was that if they supported us, they might actually bring back PF. So it's like it was a consensus on the people to push out the PF, and that's why you had that wave that happened. So it was a wave. But us as PAC, we do understand that, elections has got, such dynamics. We have participated in elections such as in certain by-elections. I remember the by-election in Ron, where the NDC won. I think it was also a wave. People were angry with the PF. I think also Sesheke was a wave as well. Of course it was a UPND stronghold, but the number of people that turned out to vote and the voters that voted indicated that was also a wave. So we do understand that. I think The biggest lesson that was there from the 2021 elections for us, or the biggest consolation, is that consistency pays off. And I think from what we are experiencing today, consistency is beginning to pay off. Oh, by the way, today is our 6-year anniversary as PAC. We were formed
Happy
on...
anniversary then.
Yeah, thank you. And it happens to be my son's birthday.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we launched on January 10th, 2016, and today we clocked 6 years. It is the consistency that is beginning to pay off. And obviously, what people need right now, and I think going to 2021, we need to get to the ground and be almost everywhere. Yeah.
6 years in politics, 6 years as a political party. How would you describe that? How has that been for you? How has the experience been for you?
Yeah, we thank God we're here, although it is not easy. You know, I think in the last 6 years, I won't mention, there are a lot of political parties that have come, got confused, joined this one, did this, you know, but PAC has been standing strong and consistent. And it is that consistency. It's not just a consistency with us being in politics, but it's also consistency with our stance, consistency with a commitment. And that's the reason why I think most people believe that we are the right alternative going forward. So it hasn't been an easy road. It's quite difficult, by the way. Running a political party is quite difficult. More so that you know, people only don't support new ideas easily. You know, people want to support things that are already moving. So you have a whole lot of these years you're just doing things on your own. But I think the feedback now is becoming better, and people are coming on board and, you know, believing that, you know, this is the future.
Now, I want to understand something. How are you positioning yourselves as an opposing political party? We saw the biggest opposition get into power in the August polls election, and now most stakeholders are complaining that, you know, Zambia does not have a strong opposition. How do you plan on positioning yourself and taking up that particular space, or filling the space?
I think, like I mentioned, it's not a race. I think it is it is about what we're doing, and if it resonates with the people. I think the biggest opposition is not a political party. The biggest opposition or stakeholder in an opposition political party is the people. So what we need to do is to make sure that, you know, we get to the aspirations of the people, and I think it will come naturally. I think it's not something that we need to have sleepless nights over, or, you know, like the way other people, I've seen many people trying to occupy that space, you know, trying to push themselves, say, we're the biggest opposition, we're the biggest opposition. And yet, you know, there's nothing to show for them to be called the biggest opposition. You know, politics is quite dynamic and it involves a lot. So for us, we just have to remain consistent. We have to remain fighting. And I think when we talk about consistency, it's also about the messaging of what we stand for. Because when you believe in something and you stand on it, I think eventually people start to believe in it. And that is what will make us be in an alliance here with the people to form the biggest opposition political party.
I know you've briefly touched on this, but how would you describe the year 2021, and how, you know, when it comes to the country's political sphere, when it comes to the country's governance system, how was that year for you?
It was quite an experience, more so that, you know, we were actively involved in the politics of this country, trying to highlight to the people about what was happening, especially in the first part of the year where we had the PF. You know, it was a bit risky, but, you know, we had to do it for the country. But it was good that, you know, change came, but this change was so sweet in the sense that, not that it was sweet because the UPND won, because our democracy won. First of all, we commend the former president for giving in, and also for the people of Zambia for standing up in numbers and for realizing that power is with them. And this is what we've been preaching to the people, to say that the power is with them. And I think from the experience of 91, and especially 2011 and 2021, I think people now know that, oh, no matter how a political party might look to be mighty, as they might call themselves, actually the mighty is the people. The mighty is the people on the ground. And I think from the experience we've gotten being on the ground with people in Kawata constituency, I think they're echoing that, so that the power is with us. So if you tell us you're going to do this, you have to deliver. Otherwise, we have the power to leave you there or to take you out. Yeah, so I think I'm very gratified that, at this point, I'm not worried about whether people doubt that, they've got power or not. I think people really know that they've got the power. And of course, we commend a few things that came with the change. There's a bit of order. Cadres are slowly, diminishing. Of course, if we become complacent, we'll still see the cadres coming back, because these cadres are still there. It's not like they're completely gone. Even in Kawata, they're there, intimidating people. We just had a situation, was it on Sunday or sometime, where we had a meeting in one of the areas in Chilenje, and the moment we left, some alleged UPND cadres came and attacked our people. So these things are going to be there, and if we're going to be complacent, we'll still see them coming. So in as much as we made a bit of progress there, for us as PAC, we want to see the country make more progress. We don't want the UPND to benchmark themselves with the PF. We want them to actually benchmark themselves with having a lot of young people getting employed, getting small businesses working, and whatnot.
All right.
So I think 2021 is a good year to remember that, power was with the people.
Let's talk about the election in Kawata. I know you've touched partially on it, but what do you make of the cancellation by the electoral body?
First of all, I mean,
itself, yeah.
It's quite disappointing that the elections have been cancelled by the irresponsibility behavior of one person. And also it's very saddening that time and again, when we give people the power to represent us, this is what they do. They go and make laws that don't make sense, and this is a crisis that we talk about. And that's the reason why we were fighting things like butane, because we didn't want to have one crisis after the other. Because this is a simple example of taking people to parliament that don't understand what they're doing, and then they create, they approve things that don't make sense. And one person decides to withdraw, the election is cancelled. So we don't know. We always have to pray when an election to say that we hope someone doesn't cancel, because it's quite expensive to prolong an election. Because, our people had budgeted for an election that was going to end next week. But now we don't know when it's going to end. And we don't know because now it allows for every person, any political party, even those that did not participate, including the political party that has a candidate that has cancelled, to bring in another candidate. Because the election has been cancelled, so you have to do fresh nominations. So we don't know whether it will be a crisis, whether someone else is going to wake up and say, you know what, I'm also withdrawing and I've resigned from the party. So I think we need to really move quickly, to actually sort out certain issues around the constitution, so that, these lacunas must be sorted out by people who love their country, not people who want to put things that would advantage them, as a political party.
But don't you smell something fishy, though, in the way the gentleman in question, the one that put off from the election, has actually handled the matter? ECZ, during their briefing, did disclose that he had to write a second letter, clarifying on the reasons that he has why he has actually pulled off from the election, and unfortunately the details were not disclosed to the media as to exactly what the gentleman had to clarify on. I mean, isn't it weird that one individual is so strong on not wanting this election to take place next week or something?
Yeah, I think we just hope. We cannot speculate about things that we don't have evidence about, but we just hope that there's no influence from outside, to push this gentleman, to do what he did. Because, to be honest, he really wanted this election to be cancelled. He really made sure that election was cancelled. So we are wondering why. Why would you go all out of your way You know, you can actually do just withdraw and maybe say, you know what, I'm still the candidate, but I'm not going to campaign. We shall understand if you don't get votes. But for you to go out of the way to inconvenience, he's not just inconveniencing the people of Kawata, he's inconveniencing the whole country. Because we need to be focusing on development, not elections and elections, you know. So it is very fishy, and we are hoping that, you know, certain things that are being said or which are being speculated, say, no, there's a political party that wants to change the candidate, you know, I hope that doesn't work out, because, and we want to challenge them to say that, you know, all of us, I hope we have not paid anyone, you know, so that we can change our candidates. You know, so we hope that we shall renominate the same candidates that, you know, we had
In the first place.
in the first, yeah. Because anyone who's going to change a candidate, it means that, you know, they probably had a role to play in the cancellation of this election.
I know people have called on reforms to be made to the Electoral Act and whatnot to ensure that some of those inconveniences are actually dealt with. What are, within just a few seconds, I know we're supposed to go on break right now, but just quickly, what are some of these suggestions you would make for the ECZ to actually make changes to once we begin to reform these laws?
First of all, these same things, I mean, we don't need, you know, such kind of laws where someone withdraws from an election. No one pushed you. It's your democratic right, you know, to stand as whatever, councillor, president, MP, or even mayor, and then tomorrow you want to wake up and just say, I'm not going to participate, and then you want to inconvenience everyone. It's also a democratic right to continue from where you found us. If it's also, it should be the democratic right of a person to withdraw, but it should not inconvenience other people. That's stamping on our rights, you know. So I believe that, you know, this, you know, it was very responsible of people that crafted this clause in the Constitution.
All right. On that particular note, of course, we take a short break. On the other side, the conversation continues. I'm in studio right now with Mr. Anford Banda, who happens to be PAC president. We're discussing a number of issues. Of course, we have touched on a few of them, one of them being the cancelled by-election in Kawata Constituency. So stay tuned. And of course, the phone lines will be open on the other side. Keep watching. Welcome back. You're watching Crossfire, and of course the lines are officially open. So give us a call. Let us know where you're watching us from and what your contribution is to tonight's program. I'm in studio with Mr. Anford Banda, who happens to be PAC president. That's the People's Alliance for Change president. And we're discussing a number of issues, but generally the topic is the state of the nation. So we have touched on, of course, the hibernation that we did see him and other political players get into just after the general elections. And of course, partially we did touch on, or rather partly we did touch on the Kawata by-elections as well. Now we move on, Mr. Banda. Let's talk about the. I want to now get into the UPND administration. The head of state, when his party clocked 100 days in governance, did ask for the people of Zambia on his Facebook page to rate him on a scale of 1 to 10 and how he has performed in the last months of him being head of state. I would love to get it from you. How would you describe the last almost 4 months now of the UPND administration? How has that been for you?
Yeah, I think the last 4 months of the UPND administration has been quite slow. Yeah, I think we need to look at a lot of things, because in 4 months, a lot of people that had hope in the new administration are beginning to lose the hope. Of course, they are rating themselves and they're thinking that, you know, they've done so much. But I think for us, we don't want an average country. We want to make sure that, you know, we become an excelling country. So people should not benchmark themselves against a failed government of the PF, and, you know, just because 1 or 2 things have changed, you know, to think that they've done better. For us to be able to have a lot of the young people that are not employed, you know, to have the businesses running, we have to work very hard, and we have to really be on our toes running. if we're going to be complacent with little achievement, then we're not going to achieve anything. Then we'll just be celebrating mediocre. So for us, I think our advice to the UPND is that they are way too far from achieving much, because the people of Zambia are expecting a lot from them. There are a lot of young people that are still unemployed in the compounds. There are a lot of businesses that are still struggling. The cost of living is still going up. In as much as one or two things are being done, we have order here and there, but to achieve what the people of Zambia want to achieve, to actually meet the aspirations of the people of Zambia, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So we want to advise our brothers and sisters in the UPND not to go to sleep, but to know that this work is a lot. Don't be blaming the PF about everything. The PF, people know why they kicked out the PF. The PF is no longer in power. When they were campaigning, they knew the challenges that were there. They said they will sort them out. But going back every time to say no, because these ones they said they did this and this one they did that, is not going to help anyone. So we would like to advise our brothers and sisters in the UPND to know that there's a lot of work ahead. Otherwise, we're literally remaining with 4 years already. Because when we get to 2026, in the next 4 years, it will be election year, and the mindset starts changing now, towards the election. So they've got 4 years to play a lot of magic to ensure that the promise that they made, first of all, they made a promise that the fuel will be cheap, which has become opposite. They said we'll increase to reduce, and we hope that this magic is going to happen in the next 4 years. Yeah.
Now that you touched on the fuel, let's get to that. I mean, what do you make of that decision? Was that the best decision ever? Because the Minister of Finance and Energy working together, did give their reasons as to why the price of fuel must be hiked. What do you make of that decision? Was that the best decision that government could make?
Well, we know that the government needs money, but I think hanging people to get the money is not the best decision, because the cost of living already had been high, which the UPND government had promised, to reduce the cost of living when they formed government. The issue is that the incomes of people have not been increased. Most people almost everyone is still getting the same incomes we're getting under PF, and even that time people were complaining to say that the cost of living was quite high. So we would have hoped that in their negotiations with the IMF, they could have safeguarded the people, because truth be told is that these hikes are not going to affect them and their families. They're going to affect us as a country, we the ordinary people in this country. So we hope that the UPND government is going to pull up their socks. That's what I mean, so that they can ensure that a lot of promises that they made are met in no time. Let the jobs be created. I was talking about the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise, which I was very excited about when it was created, but up to today there's no information. What are they saying? No, it's a new ministry, we're trying to put things in place, what. This is 4 months. For you to create that ministry, it means that it must have been plucked from your manifesto. You must have understood what you're doing when you're creating it. But how can you say 4 months that we're still putting things in place? It's a new ministry and whatnot. It means that it was just a decoration, not much about the ministry. I mean, what has the minister and his team been doing for the last 4 months? Every day from morning. You can't even set up a website, a Facebook page, or even a Twitter account.
So do you think that the president hurried in making that decision, forming the ministry?
Well, there was no way that he could have been in a hurry, because it had to start from somewhere. But we thought they understood what they were doing, because if they had, I think this time that ministry would have been running. Because for me, the reason why I was excited about the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise, I saw it as an engine of job creation, as an engine of empowering small businesses, as an engine that would put a lot of people to start doing something. But right now we don't even have an idea of why it is there. But it might not be the only one. It could be a lot of other ministries and ministers who are saying, no, we've just come in, let us settle. And if that is the complacency that is going to come with, it's going to be a disaster by the time it is 4 years from now.
All right. The numbers are on your screen. Give us a call. Let us know where you're watching us from and what your comment and contribution is on tonight's program. So, Mr. Banda, let's speak a little bit about the agriculture sector. Now is farming season. The farmers are all around trying to, make sure that we have food on the table in the next few months. But I mean, the lead payment of farmers, coupled with the dry spell that the country experienced recently, has brought a number of questions and concerns by most stakeholders as to whether or not the country is going to be food secure in the next coming months, so to say. How best do you think such a situation can be dealt with, or should be dealt with?
I think, yeah, we are also concerned because I think by October, November, the weather was clear to say that, we may have a drought. The rains were scarce. It was abnormal. And what would have hoped from the government was that, they could have created some emergency funds to mop up most of the crops that were lying around. I think you remember very well to say that there was a time when a lot of farmers lost a lot of their crops because the FRI could not buy those crops by a lack of having resource. But so, meaning that the crop was there, but the government did not secure it in time. And then they opened the borders as well to export the maize. And then the drought came. Because yes, I mean, in Lusaka, I don't know about other areas, it has been raining in the last few days, but we don't know how long it's going to rain and whether the rains that we have will be enough, to actually sustain our crops. So what we would have wanted was to see ambition, because when there's hunger, we don't want excuses to say no, it was because of the drought, and we also want to see ambition in the agriculture sector. There's more that needs to be done, which we are not seeing, which we hoped we would have seen.
What areas in the agriculture sector would you hope that government can touch on and improve on?
First of all, I think the fact that we don't have the rains, we're hoping that they would call upon farmers to start preparing, to do winter maize. That requires farmers to have irrigation systems, farmers to have land and whatnot, which we're not seeing at the moment. But that is just for our food security. But also for us as PAC, our manifesto is clear. What we wanted to do in the farming sector was to make sure that we train, help manage farmers, and export the crops. These are programs that we would have expected, the government to have come with a punch, so that people can start seeing hope. If there's anything that the UPND is not doing, is that it's not clearly telling the people which direction we're going, and apart from maybe a few people who understand about the IMF, because I can tell you, a lot of people on the ground, they don't even understand where they're going.
We have a caller on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Oh, we seem to have lost that particular. Please do feel free to call us back in. The numbers are on your screen. Let us know where you're watching us from, what your name is, and what your contribution is to the program tonight. Remember that we're sitting down with Mr. Untitled Banda, who happens to be PAC president, and we're discussing a number of issues affecting the country at large. All right, let's move on to something more heated right now with almost every parent. Free education, or the lack thereof, or is it just the removal of tuition fees and PTA fees and whatnot? Really, what's your take on that? How has the new Dawn administration handled the education sector so far? Of course, we've seen that most government schools, day schools, actually, most of them are not paying, if not all of them actually, are not going to pay school fees for their children, but boarding schools still have to pay a certain amount of fees, which has risen or brought about debate when it comes to whether this is free education or not.
Yeah, it's quite a mixed one, to be honest. And sometimes, for us as PAC, we believe that there were other pressing issues in the education sector than giving free education. Because to start with, early child or primary education, most parents were not paying much. And also day schools, most parents were not paying much. I mean, we don't want to shoot down the idea It is a good intention, so that we can get as many children, especially those
I'm going to ask you to just hold your thought right there. We seem to have a caller on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello?
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Yes.
Who are we speaking to?
Yeah, speaking to Mr. Shimba, calling you from Russia.
Yes, Mr. Chimba, please go ahead with your contribution and comment.
My comment is, yes, you can hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes. My comment is on the cancellation of the Kabwata election.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the implications? So my question is, even those that pay the nomination fees, are they going to pay another nomination fees?
Mm.
That's my question.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. The number is on your screen. Do feel free to call us in and let us know where you're watching us from. Thank you so much. That was Mr. Chimba from Luansha, asking a very important question on the just cancelled Kabwata by-election. What happens to people, to the candidates that already paid nomination fees? They have to pay the fees again and whatnot. So basically just asking for clarification on that particular process. We seem to have another person on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello?
I'm just calling from Mansa, I'm a farmer.
You're calling from Mansa. Your name, please?
I'm Francis.
Yes, Mr. Francis.
I just want to advise my fellow farmers to do a good government if you want to come in the government in future. Yeah, there are three things that we need to consider when we talk about farming, which people have never looked at, especially for so many years in Zambia. Farming involves the production, also farming involves the processing and marketing. But the greatest challenge that we have in Zambia is processing and marketing. How are we going to help farmers? Last season I saw a lot of mangoes all over the country, a lot of oranges. That's what a lot of people, the marketing, especially in Wapula here, when people grow watermelon, they grow tomatoes, the only thing they want just to get to the marketing, they don't understand the other things, especially processing. How can we help? Because that's the challenge we have, processing of produce and marketing, that's the challenge we have in Zambia. So the government is not only here for people to come with great ideas. We can give you an example in China. People who invaded a lot of things today. The China we are admiring today. Even Zambia can come together. If we can help the farmers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And the marketing. How are we going to help the farmers today?
All right, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I wasn't unable to hear everything Mr. Francis was saying, but if I heard him clearly, it was something to do with the management and helping farmers. He mentioned the ones that are growing fruits like mangoes. Were you able to hear everything that he said, though?
Not much, but I'll just say something. I hope to reach him.
Yeah, right. Before, I know we're running out of time and we have to get to our second break. So before that, and of course, before you finish responding to the other question that you were responding to, I'd love for you to just give a quick response to the questions or the comments that our callers have made so far in the program. Of course, the first one was Mr. Chimba.
But Chimba Munishan Mkwai Kurshan Kurwansha. It's true that when an election is cancelled, it means that everything has to start afresh. So like it stands, the ECZ has even guided that campaigns have stopped, which is one of the things that is a cake. I mean, why should we stop campaigns? We could have continued to campaign as we wait for the next nominations, So I don't understand why the ECZ should do. I mean, these are some of the laws that we need to look at. Where campaigns should not be cancelled. In any event, if you look at countries like Kenya, it's like every day is a campaign period. You see, this side is Raila Odinga. This side is William Ruto. They are having rallies almost on an everyday basis. But here it's a very difficult issue. So yes, Bachimba, to answer your question quickly, the candidates will have to pay the nomination fees,
which is very costly.
Which is very costly. They will need to transport, the supporters to the nomination centers, and incur other fees, yeah.
Very unfortunate. Mr. Francis, of course, and asking about management, if I got that correctly, quickly.
I think I got something like about processing and marketing.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, what I can say, Mr. Francis, is that in the agriculture sector, the agriculture sector is a sector that has got a lot of potential in this country. But to tap that potential, we don't have to approach it the way it has been approached before. We have to be innovative. We need to go all out, and do more to tap into the potential of the farmers. For example, we are talking about mangoes. How do you process and market? So we need to make sure that, farmers like yourself, if you grow mangoes, are fully supported, so that your mangoes don't just end up being wasted, but they are actually processed, so that some of these juices that we import, I'm sure we import mango juice from South Africa or from wherever, we can actually make them locally. But that will need an ambitious program from the government to ensure that, farmers are supported throughout the process. And it's not just the support of giving them money. It's about training. It's about ensuring that they've got the tools that they need to achieve their goals.
All right, and that particular, thank you so much for that response. We take a short break. On the other side, the conversation continues, and of course, we continue to pick your calls. Keep watching. Welcome back. The conversation continues. Of course, the phone lines are open. We're discussing the state of the nation. A number of issues have been brought out, like I keep mentioning and repeating myself. I have with me Mr. Anford Banda, who is the People's Alliance for Change president. Of course, we are discussing the state of the nation. So feel free to call us in if you have been following the conversation, or if at all you have any questions to Mr. Banda, please feel free to call us in and give us your name, your contribution, and exactly where you're calling us from. The number is on your screen. Mr. Banda, before we continue on that particular note, you were responding to my question on the education sector and whether or not we can clearly state that we have free education or not. I'm hoping that just after this caller, you can be able to finish responding that question. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. All right, we seem to have lost that particular one. Please feel free to call us back in and give us your comment and contribution and exactly where you're calling us from. Yes, Mr. Banda.
The education is not free completely as it was portrayed. I think we need to face that, because if you look, for example, at boarding fees, there are parents that still cannot afford to pay that, even if they say no, those that are vulnerable will be given help and there. But the promise was that education is going to be free, from primary to university. As we speak today, a lot of students at the universities are failing to get their bursaries or their loans, to be able to get into universities. So meaning that already there is some level of not fulfilling that promise. But also for us as PAC, we believe that some of the challenges that we face in this country are not really about whether we should give free education to people or not. It's about giving access to education. Free education, yes, is giving access to a few people, but the biggest challenge we have a lot of areas around the country that do not have schools. Children have to walk 5 to 10 kilometers, even more, to access education. Most of these community schools that we have, they don't have all the equipment that they need in a lot of constituencies around the country. For me, it would have been nice to actually ensure that there's access, the dots of, primary education was increased in as many places as possible. I'm sure, with the CDF, we hope that, it is going to achieve, part of that objective of ensuring that there's education in a lot of areas. I mean, there are schools in a lot of areas, but that is a huge problem, especially in rural areas. Yeah.
All right. We seem to have a caller on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Kindly turn the volume on your television set to 0. Turn it off to 0 so we can be able to communicate.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, are you getting me?
Yes, your name and where you're calling us from.
Yes, calling from Mazabuka. As you see, that is Mr. Anton Banda Maele, and I don't know the one who is standing just there. Are you getting me?
We can get you. You're calling from Mazabuka. What is your name, sir?
Mr. Emmanuel Malimbika.
Yes, Mr. Malimbika, please go ahead.
Yeah, I like your conversation with the President for Park, Mr. Anton Banda. And listening to all the questions that he's trying to answer, they are just correct. But what we are looking at concerning the free education, we even thank the government for what they have done towards the free education. And this free education did not just happen at this time. It used to happen even in the days of Kaunda. And with this, it is going to encourage a lot of people to remove the illiteracy that is pursuing with the government, in the country. As a result, we are very happy and proud with the government, what they are doing. Actually, we cannot blame them. Just within 100 days, with what they have done, actually, it's achievable. It's achievable. We are very much happy with the UPND and the contribution also from Mr. Paris. We also understand the distance. Yes, you can come up later, but in the meantime, the most important issue is the amount paid to the people that are poor. They cannot manage. So it is better, first of all, you go for free education. Then better when you start calculating of the distance so that you help the people.
All right.
I think there on, with also the ECZ, what they have done, yes, is that a little bit disappointing. You cannot understand it. But all the same, if it's part of the Constitution, then we need at least, first of all, to look on amend the Constitution. I think in some other sectors we have to amend it where possible, so that at least it's a cost now for other parties here to partake, and we need also other parties also to take place. That is democratic, in a democratic manner. I think that is well understandable. No, thanks for that.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Malimbika, for coming through all the way from Mazabuka. We value your contribution. Mr. Malimbika, right there, of course, commending the government for removing the user fees or the tuition fees on, the amounts that pupils have to pay as they head back to school. Before you react to it, we seem to have another person on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Crossfire. All right, we seem to have lost a particular caller. So in case you cannot get through to us on our phone lines, which is actually stuck on your screen right now, please do get to our social media, our Facebook page, which is Spring 24 TV. Drop your comment right there, or right down on Facebook, on a Crossfire program that is live right now on Facebook, and we'll be able to get your reactions and your comments later on as regards the program tonight. Yes, Mr. Banda, Mr. Malimbika has actually there, Malimbika actually there, appreciating government for its decision, saying that the issue of distance can come in later, but the amounts of money that parents used to pay was a bit too much.
I don't think I want to agree with him to say that, especially like I mentioned, for me, in the primary education, I would have rather we build more schools in the primary education, so that as many children, even those that have zero access, not even one term, no single trace of any school, they have a bit of access. That should be a priority, because that is the biggest problem. Because in a community where there's no school, you're losing out talent that the country might need in the future. You must remember that, talent can come from anywhere. Leadership can come from anywhere. So we cannot sideline people, in certain areas. I think that would have been the priority for me, because the fees that, the parents were paying in primary school were not much. I just hope that, this is not political rhetoric, to show people that there's free education, but there's more to do, to actually ensure that, people are properly educated in this country. But for me, the biggest priority will be, access, because in most of the constituencies I've gone, the biggest challenge, parents have is lack of schools. So we need the school there, you need a teacher there, or teachers actually, not even a teacher. You need to house the teachers. So this should have been number one priority
before we got to
the free education part. Because free education, zero, other parents can afford, but other parents cannot even find a school to take their children.
All right, very interesting views there. Let's speak about the CDF, Constituency Development Fund. Of course, we saw a large increment there that was, allocated during the recently announced budget. Now, my question is, there's been a number of concerns raised as to how this particular funds will be managed by the committee and whatnot in its current state. Is it able to manage these funds? What's your comment on that?
Yeah, of course. First of all, it was a good thing that, the CDF was increased, as long as, it's the government will afford, to disperse the money. It's good to put money back in the people, in the constituencies, but also we hope that the way this money is going to be distributed, it will have an impact on the lives of the people. We just don't want, contracts being given to political party affiliates, to get rich and whatnot. We want this money to be in the hands of the people. We want to make sure that, people benefit from the cooperatives, and this money should be put in cooperatives. We want the contracts to be done by the people of the localities, so that this money remains in those localities. Because if we're not careful, that money is going to come back to Lusaka. Because the people that will be enjoying that money is from the people from Lusaka or from wherever. So, yeah, that one part, we need to ensure that, each and every constituency must remember that, in as much as they have to buy some materials from Lusaka, but majority of the money benefits the community on the ground. The other issue is about controls. It's a lot of money, to just be given in the hands of any other people. So there has to be a lot of controls, and I hope that with this kind of budget, the Auditor General must be able to set up a committee an oversight committee to ensure that they check this funds on a regular basis, or any other committee with some kind of an internal audit kind of thing, where these funds are checked, like on a quarterly basis, to ensure that all the constituencies are using these monies properly. We don't want to be having reports every after the money has already been spent and then, no, there was abuse and whatnot. There needs to be controls now. That's the reason why some organizations, they have internal audit. So there needs to be some kind of oversight of checking, in internal audit, to check, either on a monthly basis, bi-monthly basis or quarterly basis, on how these funds are being utilized. Yeah.
All right. Let's speak about one sector that affects all of us as a collective together. Of course, every other sector does affect everybody, but this is even more personal than anything, the health sector. We've seen that, of course, we have over 30,000 active cases of COVID-19 as we speak today. How do you think
30,000?
There's quite a huge number of them, yes. So how do you think the Minister of Health is handling the sector so far, Madam Silva Marcelo?
Yeah, first of all, I think to be honest, in her defense, that department was in a mess. Yeah. So I think if I would single...
You say was in a mess. Has the mess been cleared?
No. It was in a mess. So meaning that there will be a lot of work that needs to be done to clean up, you know, from the suppliers, ledger, you know, to the whole process of, you know, how things are working out. So we really hope that, you know, she's on top of her job to ensure that that is done. You know, we'll give her a bit of time to settle. But we also want to advise people to vaccinate themselves. You know, it's very important, you know, that people should get vaccinated. If I'm not mistaken, most of the lives we are losing are those that are not vaccinated. So it's very important for you to, you know, to vaccinate. There are a lot of vaccinations that we've been drinking, which you don't question, but you want to question the COVID vaccine. So we want to advise people to vaccinate. The challenge that we have with the UPND government is that we are not seeing more of reforms in how government should operate, including the health sector. Because without reforms, the same problems that we've been talking about will come back. So what we want to see is more of what the reforms are being made, not just the reforms. Of course, you know, one of the things we've been talking about is that, you know, laws have been there, but some people have decided to ignore them, those that were responsible, you know, to abort these laws. But what we need is to ensure that we understand why people ignore these laws. Of course, some people will be persecuted and whatnot, but we need to strengthen, you know, systems so that we don't go back to the same place where we were. We need to ensure that systems are strong, especially in the health sector. We don't want to have a situation where people are, you know, getting money that is meant for people, for medicine for people in hospitals, and then people are dying because of the greediness of a few people. So we hope that, you know, we can see more reforms, you know, as we go forward, and we can actually hear more about what the reforms are being put in place. Not just tough talk. This has to be put on paper. This has to be a law or something. Just talking and issuing statement won't help us a lot.
All right. As we come to the end of the program, unfortunately we cannot take any more calls, but any predictions this year? What are you expecting government when it comes to, we've spoken partially about reforms, we've spoken about constitutional reforms, and now you're speaking about institutional reforms and whatnot. What are your expectations ahead of the year when it comes to the governance and the political sphere of the country?
First of all, I think there's one thing we have not touched quickly. I think what we want to do is to call upon the government to disclose, you know, the full conditions of the IMF. I think that behavior that they're exhibiting is more like the PF when they're not disclosing the debt from the Chinese. So we want to advise the government to fully disclose what are the conditions of the IMF. We don't want today, Bafakira Maraiti, Mairo, Fueo, Mazo, you know, we want to know. We want to start preparing what is going to happen in the future. So, as a party, we want to challenge the UPND government within the shortest possible time to ensure that, you know, they disclose what is the conditions of IMF. I believe that, you know, the UPND will manage to get the IMF as a prediction, and the cost of living is going to go up as a prediction. But we don't know whether, we know that it will be a very difficult year for the people because of the high cost of living. Because fuel was increased, now electricity will be increased, definitely it will balloon the cost of doing business. A lot of small businesses are going to struggle. We don't know what the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprise is doing to ensure that, you know, what the government is doing this side, they are countering this side. We need to see more of that. So really, it's a mixed year. It's difficult to predict. A lot of things that they have put in the budget are quite new. They need to employ about 40,000 civil servants, plus they need to disperse 25 million CDF, and there are a lot of you know, high ambition programs that they have. And let's see how that is going to go. Yeah.
Let's say the head of state is listening to this right now. What would be your advice to him?
Don't be complacent. There's a lot of work to be done. That's all I can say. Don't feel like you've already achieved. You still have a lot to do. That is my advice. Because even us, when we take over, we want to take over a country that has been managed properly, so that in the next 30 years, people should be talking about Zambia like China.
And when do you anticipate takeover?
Only God knows. Yeah. Because one other thing is that the reason why we don't want the UPND government to go to sleep is because we don't want our people to die of hunger. Because we can't just be changing governments and waiting for a new government for things to be sorted out. There was a new government. This government has to work, and our job is to make sure that they work, so that our people should start getting jobs. Our people should start having food on the table. Small business should start getting support. That is our job. We want the President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, to perform, so that as he's living as a hero, so that as we take over, we make sure that we take over a country that has been proper managed, so that we keep improving the country, so that our children in the future should inherit a country that has been better managed, and that people are talking about in the world.
All right. On that, unless you have any other final remarks, but I will take those as your final remarks. Thank you so much for coming through, and of course for joining us on Crossfire tonight.
Thank you for inviting us, and good evening to the viewers, and thank you for watching.
On that particular note, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of this episode of Crossfire. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned to S24.